Welcome to Let's Talk Evolution, the podcast where real life experiences meets the complexities of today's tech industry. Each episode, we dive into a specific topic with thought leaders who know the systems, the structures, and the nuances that drive the industry. This series is all about unpacking the inner workings of tech and learning from the people who understand it best. I am Danelle from Evolution Recruitment Solutions, and today I am your host. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical and complex discussions of our times: AI ethics, safety, and the future of humanity's relationships with intelligence systems. Joining me is someone who has been at the forefront of this global conversation, Luke Soon, partner at PwC and one of the most respected voices in AI ethics and governance. Luke has been a prominent voice in countless of panels, discussions on AI agents, protocols, and safety. He brings a thoughtful perspective into some of the most toughest questions in tech, blending his expertise both as an AI ethics advocate and strategist in this space. Great to have you on this episode, Luke. Welcome to Let's Talk Evolution. So before we dive into the conversation, could you share a bit more about your own journey and what drew you into working so deeply with AI and its ethical dimensions?
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. So I'm probably one of the oldest practicing computer scientists that we have. I'm been at this for 3 decades, looking at the applications of narrow intelligence. I think that's the fancy word to describe a very specific use cases for AI. And very quickly, I transitioned to this awareness that it's most impactful when it impacts human lives. So when we apply AI, even back then, before the pre-ChatGPT days, it was how we can apply it for healthcare and education. It's just that in my earlier years, all the time was spent on, I'm sad to say, but more of the profit-making, financial services, investment, trading. And that's where AI is very much used as well. That led me to write about my journey. I think I released a book called Genesis in 2022. So way before the ChatGPT boom and craze. And it was meant to be a children's storybook. So I've always had this dream to write a children's storybook for my daughter. That's what we used to share when she's growing up, not me, I'm old. Putting all the stories that we created together into a compendium or a book that other children can listen to, read. But then as I saw the evolution of AI and how fast things were moving, I kind of like switched gears and pivoted into more of the safety angle. So I would say in the last 5 years or so, I've been spending a lot of time with governments across the world, policymakers, on this topic of AI safety and ethics. And it gets thrown around a lot: ethics, responsibility, trustworthy AI, and hopefully we'll unpack some of the nuances in this podcast. But yeah, happy to be here and thank you for having me.
All right, thank you for sharing their background. I think it's quite an important perspective to frame today's discussion. So we're going to dive right into the first question, right? So you've called AI the arms race of our time. That's quite a powerful statement. What do you think people still misunderstand about the urgency and stakes of AI safety?
Well, as any technology, it's very, very important, but it's very easy to forget with AI, something as powerful as AI, that there is duality in technology. So a knife cuts both ways. You can use it to save lives, and you can use it to cook, and you can use it to get someone hurt. And that's the case with all technologies. It's just that the spectrum of dualism with AI is just way orders of magnitudes greater than a tool like a knife, for example. I mean, and along human history, we've met and we've had this encounter or brushes with all these incremental delta technologies. So you had the printing press, obviously everyone read about that. And then as a result of that, the churches or, religious sects could disseminate information a lot faster than, having a group of people come to a sermon and so forth. So that was good. That was good generally, depending on how you look at it. And then you have the transition from the 1800s to the 1900s when cars were hitting the road, for example. So the whole cotton industry was gone, and people who used to clean up the roads, the horse manure and stuff like that, went away. But they got reskilled, and then they made it into a new industry for most of them. And it's very important to realize that with AI, it's kind of lulling us into thinking that it's only effective for the good side. We use it a lot, almost daily in our lives. But it's also very, very important to put to give some thought to what it can do on a macro scale. And I firmly believe that, it's not us, individuals. It's not man versus woman. It's a country versus another country. It must be a united governments and regulatory bodies across the world connecting to rein this in. So basically, to sum it up, innovate responsibly. I think responsible innovation is the term that I will use for this. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing. And I think to our second question, you've also said that AI is more dangerous than nuclear weapons. That is a very heavy comparison. From your perspective, what do you see as the single biggest risk if global regulations continue to lag behind AI development?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the story. I mean, again, it's very useful to understand like how I answer your previous question. Humans are used to living in a world of scarcity. So we all know that in medieval Europe, there were no borderlines. There was like one huge set of warring kingdoms that, they go to war and then get more land. And it was always, and it has still been, always been a fight over resources, precious resources, coal, oil, and so forth. AI basically democratizes intelligence, and through that, it paves the way, if we get this right, to a world of abundance. So you can think of, and this has been mentioned by, the accelerationists, they call themselves, where, you have zero and infinite amount of energy to do anything that you want. Work would be augmented so that you can chase your own purpose and so forth. But before we get there, there's going to be what I call the fork in my book, 3 to 5 years, where it's going to be, let's not kid ourselves, it's going to be full of friction, but how we navigate this path together as a species, and I'm calling it a species because I think AI is an alien species, alien intelligence. And back to your question, Danielle, it's about seeding trust. It's about seeding trust because humans have a tendency to seed trust to systems that we build. And it just happens that AI is the first system, but I think more of it as biological species that can invent and think and reason and plan for itself. We're getting to that stage where, and just to draw a comparison with nuclear weapons, which is like contentious, nuclear weapons, even if I was the US and back then in the Cold War and, you were Russia or someone else was Russia, we had the decency, the human decency to tell each other, I've got this stockpile of warheads, and you had that stockpile of warheads. And so it was a mutual deterrent. I won't do it because you won't do it. And, we're just going to be mutually destroyed. Yeah. But what I'm seeing, especially in the last 2 years or so, is this complete breakdown of human trust between, the parties East and West. And that's why I call it the arms race of a time. And it's a bit like a prisoner's dilemma because I don't know what you're doing. You're going for something called super intelligence, that if you're the first to develop this thing called, this concept called a super intelligence, it changes the world order. It puts you right on top. And it becomes an unassailable advantage. The one that gets to super intelligence first, there will be no close second like traditional races. It will be just, far, 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 far ahead. So I think back to the crux of the problem, we have a tendency to see trust, and we can see it happening in the wars of the day. I mean, we heard a lot about the drone wars, Ukraine and stuff like that, hand drones to take out the tank and so forth. You can actually take lives. And this is where I think this is the red line that we should never cross as a species. You can actually take out lives while drinking a coffee. Maybe I'm embellishing that, but yeah. So where does the line stop? I mean, if you can get AI, a very intelligent one, mind you, to solution for or come up with an objective of winning the war, which is a very high level objective that can give AI, it then has the ability to break that task down into sub-goals and then actually perform those tasks on your behalf. And years and hundreds of thousands of human history years, not hundreds of thousands, 90,000 years of human history. We tend to err on the negative side. We tend to have greed. You've got all those things that plague us. We tend to say, take the easy path. And I'm just worried that with AI, there is no replay button. I mean, with the previous technologies, you can still say, we still sit in planes. We still have the seatbelt sign on in cars. And yes, There are still people who die from plane crashes, car crashes, and so forth, but it's regulated. How you introduce drugs to the world, that's regulated. The regulation for AI is less than a sandwich. So that really worries me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so I think you mentioned just now about navigating AI, right? I think together as a species. I think that brings us to a question that I've been asked a lot as a recruiter. I think as AI becomes part of our daily lives and workplace, there's a lot of anxiety about what that means for people's careers and skills. So what do you see are the most critical skills professionals will need to thrive in the human kind of AI future?
Yeah. If I say to be more human, that's really cheesy. But I think it's back to the point, and I think government should lead this conversation. But I'm happy, we're all happy to be part of it. We should think more about this transition period, because I'll give you an example. Agents are the thing right now. They're here to stay. So if let's say in my prediction at least, that we've got maybe about a billion or so agents by 2027, late 2026 or 2027, in the workforce. I mean, just think of that. I call it the AI Atlantis. It's like discovering a continent called Atlantis, and then it's populated 1 billion PhD level, mind you, 1 billion PhD level workers or digital worker equivalents that don't tire, don't need to eat, and you just pay them a fraction of a dollar for them to work 24/7. We don't spend enough time thinking about that. And if I bring that problem back to today, when we still have time before this fork happens, we should think of human skills that that would land us in a better place. Because let's put some design principles in place. First principles, design principles. Humans must always be in the equation. Again, I know this is controversial. Some people would say that, you can displace and take the human out and we'll spend our time on beaches and doing stuff that we want. I don't believe that, and this is my personal opinion. We still need to be part of a digital hybrid workforce where I see humans as leaders, and I use this word quite forcefully, leaders of a hybrid team that are comprised of very, very intelligent agents. So you've got an agent doing this for you, you've got an agent doing that for you, and these agents might come from different companies or different countries. A human must always lend the leadership perspective. Now you ask this question, I mean, based on your profession and your expertise, how do you define leadership of new age when we work with machines and autonomous intelligence? I believe, again, I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong. I think we need to spend more time back, like in the history. So when we had human thinkers like philosophers like Socrates, like Plato, the actual thought process of humans solving problem and reimagining the world is something that, if you notice with our children today, they don't think. They don't think as in, like, if you have an output from AI, that's the singular truth that they believe in. What about the generation before? I mean, I hope to transcend that in the book as well for the future generations. That thinking process of like solving the actual problem solving. Yes, you can use AI to make the problem easier and go away, but that algorithm in thinking about that problem, I think that's innately human. I think we need more of that as part of the leadership package. The other thing that I think you need as part of the human leadership package is ethics. So you have new roles in the future. And I'm one of the first, actually. I'm called an AI ethicist. There's a small community of us. We call ourselves the AI ethicists. That, we're not doomers. Don't get us wrong. We're not doomers. Doomers would be people who are, as we discussed before the show started, people who would use that propaganda for personal gain, right? Popularity and so forth. I think it's walking the narrow path. So ethicists are very, very important, because with AI, and just another point to belabor that, the engineering part of that solution goes away. So, I mean, you don't need computer programmers in, say, a year or two, really. I mean, I would say if you use Claude, for example, that's like top grade computer software programmer today. And even computer software programmers use them. There's not a single programmer today in my company or anyone else outside that's not using a coding agent. So that's natural. However, the testing part of it, so yes, AI comes up with something just by you speaking to it, and then it iterates. But something that people don't realize that as part of this leadership package is the testing and the quality control part of it. So that used to be in the old ages where we spent a lot of time, in order to get a car like a Toyota out of the factory, the level of quality and ISO standards that go into that was a lot, billions, trillions. Now with AI and agentic AI and the future versions of AI, it's kind of flipped that way as well. Not the development of the code, the creation part of it is easy. We can talk to it. You can come up with a video, a song, anything, even this podcast if we wanted to virtually. But what's said, the content, the truth behind it, the ethics behind it, the rules behind it, that's where I think humans should really display leadership for the future. And you'll see new roles like this popping up as soon as 2 years. And I'm working with governments, at least our government, to make sure that the transition path to some of these new roles at a more granular level, because it doesn't help to say that we need human leadership. We have to break it down. I'm sure you're familiar in your industry to a job skill set that's actually actionable for us to go into. So yeah, that's how I see things transitioning.
Okay, and you mentioned just now that you see maybe like more, I guess, execution software developers that might basically not have a job soon. In those that I guess, what's your advice to, I guess, people who are just coming out of school studying software development? What should they do? Should they learn something new?
No, not really. Well, to rephrase what you said, the software developers will spend more time doing testing, ethics, and philosophy.
Okay.
So they would not over-index on the development of that software because there's a very good coder, an agent that you can use, but they would still be the idea owner, if you will. I mean, it's like, what's the intended purpose of that software that they were developing? But they would spend a lot more time on the ethics, safety, and regulatory and philosophy part of the testing. So it's like you come up with a piece of software, but to make sure that it does what it says it does, to make sure it's doing it in the right way, because with AI, you can actually achieve objectives, but you can take shortcuts, as I explained with that war scenario just now. You want to make sure that the chain of thought and the reasoning in how that software package was developed, because it just looks like a bunch of code, right?
Yeah.
That it's actually still kosher and it's aligned to human values. I know this gets into the philosophy range, but the software programmers will need to then shift more to his or her right brain to re-look at that piece of code that was generated automatically in the flash of an eye, but more with this lens. So they'll still be around. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just misunderstood that, but now I get it. Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing. I think people are normally pretty stressed out. I think for our advice, normally we do say, or at least for me, because I do more go-to-market, I normally advise people, if you are client-facing and you are meeting people and you're building relationships, you are safe for now, I hope. But I mean, those that can do your job remotely, right? Or all you do is code or design, you might have to upskill a little bit. That's what we are trying to figure out now. But yeah,
Yes.
I think you basically have been ahead of the curve for so many conversations about AI, right? And you've even written about your own predictions about where this technology is headed. So I guess it brings us to the last question, right? So which of your predictions are now starting to come true? And what do they signal about what's coming next for AI?
Yeah. So before I get onto your predictions question, I just add a bit more color to your previous questions. More jobs will be created. So I think that's that's a headline that I want to put out there in your show. More jobs will be created. So I don't believe in the displacement of job. I would use the word an augmentation. So I'll give you another example, which makes sense to probably all the listeners. The invention of the calculator, and I'm old enough to use logbooks. You guys probably don't know what that is, but you checked out sums using a logbook. It's a pre-calculator days. But when a calculator was introduced, all the math teachers, at least in America, was worried. Like, what do we do now? I mean, the kids have access to that level of narrow intelligence. The answer is life goes on. And you know what? The kids started learning calculus in middle school, before middle school. They started incorporating calculus much earlier into in the curriculum. So the other example, far extreme, is that with AI, I mean, lawyers are not going to go away, unfortunately. you're just going to have much more complex lawsuits. So you're going to have humans augmented with AI, and they would come out with more complex lawsuits, more complex problems, and definitely more complex and more efficient ways of solving it. So it's going to be human plus AI versus, if you can use that, human plus AI. Yeah. Now to get onto your question. So the predictions are really interesting. In fact, I get called back. There's this conference called Super AI, and they get me to refresh the predictions every year, and it seems to be like a hit with the audience. Just to see how far off. So far, it's been pretty close. So one of the more interesting ones, at least to me, would be the economic sanctions. So again, I mean, this was released in 2022, but some of the chip wars and economic sanctions that are happening now, even when Biden passed over the administration to Trump, and how it puts us to a choke point around the China-Taiwan Straits. I'm not supposed to speak about this, and gets into politics, but basically the supply-demand economics and how that plays out in the first stage of an economic war. I mean, just use the word economic war. That's something that that's going to boil very quickly around 2027 to the end. Boil. And again, I mean, we've got lots of ways and avenues to step down and choose a better path. That's one. The other thing that I think it's pretty interesting, and it's coming really true and quite, I wouldn't say scary, but a bit gratifying for myself, is the rise of the humanoids. So this humanoids meaning, when I spoke about agentic AI, we all think about agents as pieces of software and code that lives in a digital world. But hang on, this is where I think the East, I use the word East generally, leads the West, and it's around the physicalization of intelligence. So think of robots that actually walk among us. Think about robots that, humanoid robots that do house chores. That would be in your house by 2028, about 2028, about 20,000 per pop. Or you can even have it as a subscription model, just like your phone. Those new members of the workforce, not just the agents that we use on software, those humanoid robots and AI that does actual physical work like us, has the dexterity like us, can think like us, and has more intelligence point than us, I believe. Again, this is not yet to be proven true, but I feel quite strongly, is the final jigsaw puzzle, the piece towards what we call artificial general intelligence. So now you see firms chasing towards building up something called general purpose intelligence at above or similar to human levels across all disciplines, math, science, you name it. So there's things like humanities last exam. Yeah. So we're going to crack that. I think that's under the table. We'll definitely get there. But one of the last pieces to get there is the access to real world physical data. When I say real world physical data, it's like how you and I actually interact with the world when there's gravitational pull, when machines learn, the relationship of physics and so forth. This is the final piece to me. And I predicted that in the book. And the form in which this AI will get access to real world data is best described via humanoid robots. And I feel that, not just to be a bit more controversial, I feel that the East has a bit of a lead in this area. So something to watch out for, but very interesting. And definitely you will see embodied, and the fancy terms for embodied intelligence, physicalized intelligence, blah blah blah. But it's basically humanoid robots with very high IQs doing work in society. Yeah, so that'll be interesting.
Thanks so much, Luke, for sharing your perspective. I think it's honestly a great time to be alive, I guess, to see how AI started and where it's going. I think it's truly super exciting. So really, really appreciate your insights today. Thank you so much for sharing. I think conversations like this are exactly why I guess this podcast exists, to go beyond headlines and to dig into the deeper questions about how tech is shaping our world and how we live in it. I guess your perspective on AI safety and ethics, and of course, your predictions have been super interesting. And I think will leave our listeners with a lot to think about. For everyone listening, if you did enjoy this episode, don't forget to follow so you don't miss out on future conversations with leaders that are shaping the future of tech. Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.